PrymalChaos. Hey guys, PrymalChaos here. Welcome to the channel. So I've done several Ren videos before. Many of you who follow the channel have probably seen several of them already. One thing's for sure, there's something magical about the way that he composes, his lyrical storytelling, bard-like storytelling, and the way that he sort of has this vision for how he interacts musically, you know, like as far as music videos or presenting himself and things like that. It's all incredible, right? He's an artist that exists on a completely different level. It's obvious. There's 100 million reaction videos just like this one that sort of indicate that he's the kind of artist that's always challenging people's perceptions and pushing boundaries and sort of finding a niche for himself in this insane corporate music business thing where he's kind of like carving his own path, and he's doing that through just creating these incredible humanistic connections with people like you and I, right? And it's such a foreign concept in the music business, and it really shouldn't be. Like, artists are nothing if not mirrors that are held up to society to say, you know, this is you guys. I'm creating this so that you have a reaction to it and we can all enjoy it together, or it can all make us feel a certain way together as a community. But it seems like most, particularly pop music or things like, you know, country rock and things like that, they're just sort of this artifice that doesn't allow for a true uninhibited emotional connection in a lot of cases. That's not necessarily true. Often there's particular songs in people's catalog that resonate emotionally with people. But Ren sort of does it without this artifice and this facade that's kind of like, you know, even though we're connecting, I'm over here and you guys are all over there. Ren seems very community-based, and in not only the way that he interacts on, say, his Discord, but also in the way that he challenges the rest of us with his art. It's very in your face. It's very standing right next to you. It's very knocking on the door to your heart. There's always something that's worth watching in his work. So right after this, I'm actually going to go and do Money Game Part 2, but due to my scheduling at the moment, which is really tight, I'm going to have to maintain my upload schedule. I'm going to have to probably separate them. So make sure you hit subscribe so that you get notified, and hit the bell as well, so you get notified when that one pops up, because I'd love for you guys to be able to watch them all at once. Just with my time constraints lately, I'm not going to be able to do a bunch of videos, so I'm going to have to separate these ones. But yeah, hit subscribe. Before I jump in, I just want to say this video is brought to you today by Enchroma. Enchroma make glasses for colorblind people like myself, which is why I tend to support them on my channel. If you or anyone you know is colorblind, click the link in the description. It'll take you to their website where you can get a free eye test and maybe find out if you have a deficiency, if so, what kind. And from there, you can pick up a pair of stylish glasses that will help you see the world a little bit more like everyone else. Here we go. Ren Money Game, official music video.
It's a strange time we're living in. War can put fear in. Hierarchy parties, they make us feel inferior. Greed runs through parliament interiors. Devils walk among us, they fit the criteria. Eerie theory, strife, fearing, weary-minded men when we're clearly living in dictatorships. Nearly blinded by illusions to choose who's fooling who. A ball chained to your shoes on pain. It's a crying shame. The pursuit of our own wealth lights a flame that makes greed a game that lets this whole war burn. As the world turns, the whole world burns. But money was invented for trade, but now those bits of paper twist hearts, make slaves, turns a saint into a sinner, a child into a killer. His finger on the trigger of a money game. Oh, rain, 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 rain.
Oh, come on.
Comes our way, and those who rise through distorted lies, poison in the veins, but we like to point the blame, 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 blame. It's easier to blame, but point the mirror at ourselves. We're all part of this old money game. Stop.
Come on. Wow. Okay. Oh, wow.
Dear Mr. President, it's evident that everyone's a...
I got to stop it there. We got to stop somewhere, right? What's interesting about Ren is, like, I know that, you know, his band Big Push and stuff has done some, you know, Bob Marley kind of things and some, you know, some things that sort of straddle genres into reggae and stuff like that. But what's interesting about this track is it's just pure groove so far. I mean, look, it's intense. Obviously, the visuals are going to get more intense. I'm steeling my nerves against that. But, you know, just things like just the way he's just sitting in the pocket and the little embellishments and stuff. It's funny when you find a classic artist like someone like Bob Marley who has just a pure understanding of the soul of their art, right? They don't attempt to do a certain thing. They're not trying to be the next Ariana Grande or the next, you know, major pop star or the next Pink or whatever. They're not trying to shoehorn themselves into being the next thing in the industry or the next artist that people are paying attention to by aping the talent that's around them and trying to be better than everyone else at those things. When you get somebody like, you know, like Bob Marley, who's a pure soul, the music just flows through him. There's no challenge to it. It doesn't seem difficult. It doesn't seem like any effort was put into writing the songs or creating the songs, even though I'm certain there was. It doesn't feel that way because it's like when they breathe out, the music comes out, right? There's no attempt to create the music. The music's just there, right? It's so inherently ingrained in their DNA and in their lifelong, you know, journey of overcoming like the difficulties of learning your art. You're at that level where the art just creates itself via you. That's the vibe I get with Ren. He's so comfortable in his own skin and he's so understanding of his talent and his style. And I mean, it sounds kind of trite when I'm saying it, but you get what I'm saying. It's like there's a spirituality in the way that he sort of presents art that doesn't require him to really feel like he's working on it. It just happens, you know? And that's the vibe I'm getting from the front of that song, you know? And again, I love that this is a live performance and they've worked out a way around the whole, he's not going to play guitar on this, because they need obviously two characters for the narrative of the storytelling. So it's, I mean, it feels very much like that's Ren under that hood as well, you know, or at least that's how it's supposed to feel. And again, this is kind of, it reminds me a little bit of High Ren, where there's like the two different caricaturizations of his personality. Anyway, let's jump back in. I'm just going to jump back a little bit. There we go. There's something ominous about just putting on rubber gloves like that, man. Especially when you're in like a abandoned space. I love that percussion element there.
Dear Mr. President, it's evident that everyone's a resident of fear when they support these ideas to keep us separate, when they make us believe that everybody is coming to terrorize you in the streets. They say badly through gritted teeth, that's my right to hate, that's freedom of speech. But when did freedom become a reason to hate? A way to justify a racist slur or insult we make? There's an irony in freedom, cause us in the West, we have pillaged and plundered the murder that savages colonized all of the rest. That's called hypocrisy. Preach a certain value that you never keep yourselves. Your country was in flames, you denigrate yourselves in a second. Still you spit your venom, demonizing immigrants when really you're the immigrant, cause all of us are immigrants or descended from immigrants. Irony is imminent, I'll shed the light on immigrants. America was colonized by Britain. Britain, it was colonized by Rome, and also colonized by the Saxons. They were German, by the way. You know how people throw shade upon the Germans because of history's pain, and yet we made the same mistakes all again. Demonize a whole people, Jewish or Muslim, the same and the same. Old situations play on repeat, the same old TV shows repeat. Yeah, we worship the bleak, our opinions aren't our own, and we follow like sheep. There's no left, there's no right, in the middle we sleep. Rain, 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 rain. A storm it comes our way.
That's so beautifully musical.
And those who rise through distorted lies, poison in the veins, but we'd like to point the blame, 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 blame. It's easier to blame, but point the mirror at ourselves. We're all part of this whole money game.
Oh my God. Wow. Oh man. Oh my God, there is so much to unpack there. So I mean, look, we've discussed how, like, musically it's beautiful. It's a beautiful art piece. It's theatrical. It's got like an ominous energy to it that's sort of just this sense of impending doom and threat. That, you know, it reminds me of like movies like Eyes Wide Shut, where, you know, there's so much of it is in the lead up to an event happening, and the, you know, just the processing of the trauma, the perceived potential trauma, you know, and then, but then nothing happens, you know. Ren, or whoever the gentleman is, I can never remember his name, who works with him on the videos, definitely went to the school of Stanley Kubrick. The message is kind of more of what I want to talk about. And, you know, it's about that sort of partisanship of everybody has a side. Everyone picks a side and goes all in on the ideologies of that side, whatever team you're on. And it seems like the further you get away from having like a balanced centrist kind of perspective, the more extreme you become, to the point where everybody becomes isolated from one another. We can't stand the side of one another. And that's not being human, right? And so what that sort of evolves into is this sort of broken down, fractured identity politics sort of thing, where everybody becomes this unique, individualized victim or aggressor, regardless of, you know, their personality or their actions. It's just, if you buy into one principle from Team A, then you must subscribe to their entire rhetoric. Or if you're, you know, subscribed to, you know, option B, then you're a specific kind of a person that's just incompatible with the other team. And I don't know, politics has always been fairly separate, but I think with the advent of social media, and I think with the advent of certain powers that be manipulating people's sort of attention and sort of, you know, pushing these almost falsified narratives that we can't all get along, then, you know, that's kind of a new thing. And I feel like the more that sort of becomes prevalent, the more separated we all are, and the more, you know, things like xenophobia. He talked a lot about like racism and bigotry and things like that in the context of this lack of understanding of history. You know, humans have always been at each other's throats. There's always been domination, and thinking that you're holier than thou because you live in a society where, you know, something happened and you can be judgmental about some other community in the world or whatever. But when you look back historically, nobody is free from having blood on their hands, you know, and you need to sort of like look at history in the context of its expanse, rather than, you know, your monoidistic sort of perspective where you've got zero context of how the world relates, you know. I mean, this is a silly anecdote, but lately, and this is particularly important for someone from Australia, right? Like, Australia is kind of unique in that we're an island that's separated from the rest of the world, right? The major continents, we're out here on our own. There's only 20 million Australians. There's less people in Australia, I think, than there is that lives in like London, right? And so I've been playing GeoGuessr, which is a game where you get to, you have to guess where you are in the world based on Google Maps. And so as you start to develop this better picture of where all the countries are in the world and how they're all interrelated with one another and have borders and things like that, you start to understand how, there's so many different factions of people that are kind of forced into being neighbors with one another. And you can see how that evolves through time as being, there's stories of domination and conflict and persecution and things like that. And it's sort of a foreign concept for somebody who lives in a country that's like, what, 200 and less than 250 years old and is separated from the rest of the globe, and so even in Australia, we have our own xenophobia, and there's, issues with immigration, as far as like, again, xenophobia and people, it takes generations for new immigrants to be accepted as part of the landscape and things like that. The other thing I really wanted to talk about was the caricaturization of that second character in the narrative, which I feel like is in every way supposed to be. It felt like it was supposed to be Ren under there. Obviously, he's playing the guitar part, and we've seen Ren do that a million times. His guitar playing is very personal style, and so having somebody else there, I think it's supposed to mirror who he is. So I guess there might be some sort of narrative of an internal conflict going on here as well. Like self-harm sort of thing, where he's sort of trying to take out his anger at the world on himself, or maybe, he's threatening to do that, or maybe he's struggling with his understanding of humanity and things. So that's a possibility as well. But what was interesting was the scene where he comes over, and I thought he was actually stabbing the guy to death, but it turns out that he was, he walks away and there's now eyes on this faceless being, right? And nothing is more important than eyes as far as identifying humanity, right? That's where all of our expression is. You can tell a lot about a person and how they're feeling just by looking at their eyes. And in fact, it's a key identifier of us as individuals too. Everybody's eyes are different. That's why when you want to hide someone's identity, you block out their eyes. It's pretty simple. So by bestowing identity upon that faceless character, Ren has, then the moment comes around where I believe he comes over to pour the gasoline on, and he can't bring himself to do it because now he's looking at a face. That face has expression. It's humanized. And so I guess the solution then is to walk away and then, maybe destroy that violent side, right? The side that doesn't have the understanding of the faceless, humanistic element of this whole argument and debate, right? It's easy to sit back and judge everyone else when you don't know who they are, when it's a faceless person on the internet that you're having an argument with, or if you're thinking about a group of protesters that are marching and blocking your city and they're pissing you off. They're not humans, they're a mob, right? And when you start to put individual characteristics and faces and names and humanistic elements to those characters, suddenly it becomes an awful lot more difficult to judge them as a group, right? And so I think maybe that's part of it. Like, again, this is my first time seeing this. It's hard to sort of take so much in, but my instinct is to understand it in that way, that now he's like looking into himself and he's like, I can't bring myself to hurt this person now that they have an identity, right? Now that I understand it's a human being under that mask. And so the easiest way to do, to solve that problem rather than take it out on someone else is to pull it back into yourself and maybe destroy that element of xenophobia and rage and pain and take that away. And I feel like in this scenario, Ren isn't killing himself. He's killing the aggressor within himself, which is like, the one with the baseball bat and the threatening one, and the one that was, harming this other character through mission of action of just being violent, right? And so I think that's a really good lesson, and I hope that that's correct. I'd love to hear, this is why I'd really love to interview Ren, because I have so many questions. But, it's art at its core, right? You can't, my interpretation is going to be different to your interpretation and to the interpretation of the thousands of people who are watching this video and screaming at me right now going, that's not what it's about. Maybe that's the case. But I've always said, like, the interesting thing about music and art in general is that it's up to you to interpret it. Once the artist puts it out there in the world, it doesn't belong to them anymore. It belongs to the person who's looking at it or viewing it or experiencing it. And at that point, you have to sort of let go. And I love, like, I'm not sure if it still holds true today. I know Maynard from Tool doesn't typically write down his lyrics and put them out publicly because to him it doesn't matter, because it's how you interpret the things yourself and the meanings of the songs is more important than anything that he could do to take away some of that vibe that you've manifested for yourself in your connection to that song. If you go out there and you believe the song is about everything is blue, and he goes, actually, it means that everything's red. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, then I don't understand the song at all. It's much better if you just allow the viewer, or the listener in this case, to understand that the song is just about being blue. You know, like that's the beauty of art. And this, you know, art like this, which has really complex and twisted and convoluted narratives, or like concepts of, like, you know, high concept stuff of, you know, humanity, like getting to the core of the pain of the world, right? Of course, everybody's going to see it a different way. And I'd really love to sort of know exactly what was going on in Ren's mind when he pieced all this together. But at the same time, I kind of don't. I feel like what I got out of it is exactly, you know, what I needed from it, which is that we all need to look within ourselves at some of that internalized rage, and sort of look at everybody else as being individuals rather than being the problem, right? And there's a lesson just in that for everybody, you know, and we all have to really focus on that, strictly because the powers that be in the world, whether it be mainstream media, whether it be internet pundits, whether it be people, you know, even companies weighing in on ethical debates and things like that. We live in a world where we're not allowed to have our own opinions anymore. Our opinions are bestowed upon us by the powers that be, or the mob mentality, or, you know, just the general consensus. And if you stray outside of that and start to think for yourself and think, okay, maybe things aren't as bad as they're making out, or maybe this isn't as big a problem as we're seeing. Anybody who's ever been on the other side of a news report knows that how the news articulates the scenario that they're talking about is vastly different from when, you know, the situation you were in. It's never the same. It's always embellished. If it bleeds, it leads. That's the key. It's like, how many eyeballs can we get on this? Or the other side of the coin is when mainstream media or anybody like that who's in power of telling the story refuses to tell the story because it goes against their personal interests. That's equally as terrifying. But anyway, it's all a big money game. Awesome. Anyway, that's about all I got time for on this one. If you feel like I brightened your day at all, feel free to support the channel. Just buy me a coffee. I'll leave a link in the description, or, you know, like, share, follow, subscribe. Don't forget to check out my Discord as well. We've got a lot of people over there who love discussing stuff like this. And of course, support the artists. Check out Ren's stuff if you haven't already. Obviously, if you're watching this, you've seen it all. But, you know, I always like to support particularly artists with, you know, these groundswell kind of movements behind them that are sort of, they're manifesting their community around them just by being great artists, you know, rather than having $1 million marketing campaign. I'll always support an artist like this over anyone else. Thanks again, guys. Stay primal. Catch you on the next one.